you're gonna have to wait to hold up. You guys may have to forgive me a bit if I stumble and whatnot. First time speaking, and I do not have a very good working memory. I blame my ADHD for that. So let's get this on the road. As I was saying, this is my first time speaking outside of my school speech class. That was really my first go at it. This will be interesting for us all, no doubt. Feel free to ask me questions or interrupt me as I move along for any clarification you need, all right? So first off, what did I do to get here? To where I am right now, standing in front of you? The answer is simple. I did what all humans do as they journey through the challenges of life. I learned. But it was more the application of acquired skills that led me to this moment in time. But before I chose to put that knowledge to use, I had to make peace with my own demons. The ones that strengthened throughout my life with challenges, the ones that controlled me, consumed me, all because I let them. And that began in first grade. I was severely Aspergian at the time, how you call someone with Asperger's syndrome. Rigidly enslaved to a routine I desired to have because I believed that ensured safety, and I often showed that my obsession over the time on the clock, making sure things went as scheduled and whatnot, flying into a panic whenever everything was a second off. I convinced myself all the time that those who said we'd stay on track were liars, complete and utter liars, if they didn't go at the exact time they said they would. And I often blamed my dad on that one. I also had a tendency to be rather direct and blunt in conversations with children and adults alike, which is a very common aspect of Asperger's. Part of that was unrefined social skills, which I didn't know any better or have the skills to correct myself at the time, and neither did the rest of our family. But also because I'm a very honesty-driven person. Part of that is the morals and values my father has instilled in me, and another part of it is, well, that's just me. I don't even think I can tell a very convincing lie, and if you guys see that as a lie, I can assure you it is not. But it's up to you to decide whether or not I'm lying. Either way, the biggest issue was the constant routine disruptions. I'd get upset, I'd panic, and then I'd get downright angry at the apparent betrayal of my teachers and the staff. I'd run out of the classroom, running up and down the hallways to get away from them, and this became a daily routine in its own right. Soon staff began to restrain me, only fueling my anger and desire to flee the school. Well, had I wanted to, I would have fled, but I was too afraid of getting in trouble. That was another thing of mine. But over the course of this daily suffering at the school, my teacher spoke to my dad, saying she thought I had autism. We quickly got me assessed and found that I had Asperger's syndrome, which is on the autism spectrum. But not exactly autism. You could describe it as like a less severe form of it, but with a lot of the same symptoms. Eventually, my father got himself tested afterwards after recognizing a lot of the same symptoms, which answered many of his seemingly unanswerable questions from the suffering of his own childhood. It became clear that it was a genetic trait, male dominant, as well as the ADHD, which I recently found out I had in addition to him and my two younger brothers. And after that main question was answered, I still suffered during my time at school because the staff was unwilling to cater to my needs. They thought I had to behave. They thought it was all behavior-based. My father promptly took me out of first grade to homeschool me, where it was discovered I had gotten ahead of the class by the time we decided to try again halfway through second grade. It was not a good idea. Me and him both realized that very fast. It was at the same school, by the way, which only impacts the fact that it was a bad idea. I began to have my rage fits again, running out of classrooms, being restrained, and then the next time he decided to remove me, it was for good. You guys have any questions so far? Can any of you relate? And again, all my stumbling, I'm human. What can I do?
Great.
Years following this were not as prominent in my life, other than going through one more school and then moving to another town and finally finding a fit for me in a private school, which effectively helped my social skills and learn better coping skills. I spent 2 years there, and the school's name is Claire Woods. And after those 2 years, I decided it was time to try again at the local middle school. This time around, I was actually enthusiastic about that, which even I was surprised by, because I had always dreaded going back into the public school system after what happened in first and second grade. Okay, hold up. After I completely transitioned back into middle school in 7th grade, I had finally gotten what I desired, a place amongst the normal neurotypical kids, as well as being academically challenged because, the school I was at before was more for like mentally challenged kids, so I didn't exactly get my intellectual needs met there. And I had really craved that beforehand. I finally had staff accommodating my needs, which they absolutely refused to do, first and second grade. And I actually enjoyed the classes. I find that not many kids enjoy learning nowadays. The downsides to the school experience, however, quickly became evident. The kids themselves, they were complete jerks to me, and even that's an understatement. I faced verbal attacks very often during my time in 7th grade, but I still managed to make it through the school day. Then, 8th grade just took it up a notch. As the days began at school again, so did the verbal bashing. Just about every day, someone annoyed me or outright insulted me. I'm not even sure if it was because of my Asperger's, but that definitely showed based on how I acted around others. I definitely didn't act like others. It was daily, it was in the halls, and it was in the classrooms. None of the staff caught it or could do anything about it. They noticed nothing, and the staff in general, again, couldn't do anything about it, nor did they know how to. They always did like things to educate kids on bullying, but that didn't help any because a lot of the bullies I bet could care less. Emotionally and mentally, I retreated farther back into the recesses of my mind upon each insult I received. I made the mistakes so many my age still make. I held it all in. I became a hardened shell, refusing to let myself cry or get visibly emotional to any extent out of fear of judgment and more bullying. It worked at times, but at my own personal expense. I effectively have hardened myself up, which makes it harder for me to cry even now, which I admit does cause me issues, especially upon getting stressed out, because I spend a lot of time helping my friends out and I end up absorbing their stress, so that does cause me issues. Back then, I could hold it back, but not always. My emotions would come spilling out in angry outbursts and the tears I feared to shed. And it was at the expense of both my family members and myself, because I was too stubborn to ask for help, and sometimes I still am, and because I chose, keyword chose, to hold it in. In one case, I cried because I was driven by a desire to please my parents, to make them proud, and I blindly convinced myself that pushing myself and becoming miserable in the process, that not pushing myself and becoming miserable in the process made them disappointed. I was more focused on anything than anything on pleasing them, because I based my own self-worth on them, because they were the ones I knew did not insult me and accepted me. My father has since reassured me that I make him proud regardless. But the breaking point came at a very unwanted time. My brother Aiden's 10th birthday party. It occurred at Chuck E. Cheese, and we were my mom had us for the weekend. As we were sitting at Chuck E. Cheese, the boys were having fun. The whole of my past, what I've suffered, most importantly, the bullying throughout the years, mainly the most recent stuff, just hit me head on, like a car full speed. I began to cry, and I told my mom did not want to go back to school. I was afraid in that I wanted to die. I'd rather die than go back. I had given up. I had had enough of life. We called up my father, and he said he'd take me out once winter break started, which was the following week, after 2 days. I was so relieved. But that, unfortunately, would not be enough time. I went back to school that Monday so anxious and so emotionally fragile that I felt that any insult would shatter me like a glass, which it did because I was fully expecting it. Not even halfway through the day, I was insulted, after which I went to the office and I was asking the counselor for a way to kill myself, mainly a knife. She called my dad up, and I left that school for good as well. I had allowed the kids to influence me, to make their thoughts my own, which translated into one clear definition, that I was a worthless piece of junk that should have been tossed out a long time ago. And I completely and truly believed it. In a lot of ways, I've used this as discrimination because, well, we're all different in our own ways, and a lot of kids have different views of differences, what's normal and what's not, and often they use that against the kids who seem different to them. And in a way, I felt weaker than them because they forced it upon me, and I was a very sensitive kid at the time and always took it personally. But it was mainly, again, because I let them. They fueled the years-long war against myself, which did not work in my favor at all. With my challenges themselves, I was always beating on myself for every single slip-up, every mistake, and condemning myself internally for it every time. The kids just helped me prove that point to myself even more. I helped them carry to bits, and then slowly but surely, I begin to piece myself back together again. Any questions so far? I got a lot of you guys can relate. As the second half of that school year, which I spent homeschooled, was nearing its end, my family moved here to DeKalb. It was here that I found that I could enter the local high school. I am currently a junior there. I found out I could start anew. I said sure, as I wanted to see if this could work, and this choice would affect me in more ways than I ever thought possible at the time. Freshman year, personally, I have designated as recovery mode, because for the duration of that year, I was still withdrawn, just trying to get by, and thankfully securing a few friendships along the way, the majority of which were with fellow Aspies. I also found more ways to cope, primarily by using my phone to replay scenes from favorite movies of mine as my main coping technique at school, which is more or less for pleasure now, because I have so many people I'm comfortable around at school now. I did endure some bullying there, but not as brutally as the 8th grade I wanted so dearly to forget. However, as I look back now, I'm glad I endured what I did in 8th grade, because I got a couple friends I still hold near and dear there to this day, and the whole experience set me up for what was to come next, which happened in sophomore year, last year. Right before starting sophomore year, I knew where I was going, how it would be like, and how I would not suffer the same way I did in 8th grade. How? Because I made the choice to start befriending others, to step outside my comfort zone, to start being a better person. And I started that by befriending familiar faces on Facebook, to establish connections and bonds, to work into physical interactions at school, and it worked out beautifully. As I befriended more, I began to feel more confident in myself and my own self-worth, and began to believe that I could be a good person and do more than I thought before. Soon enough, I would make those thoughts reality. Thank you. As my friendships began to build, I noticed more and more the problems my friends were experiencing, and I wanted so desperately to help them out, which I was able to in some cases, because I could relate, because they were in a lot of the same states I was. It also brought to my attention the negativity I had finally begun to fight off. I was seeing it in others all over the place. I did not know what to do at all. Every night I would spontaneously think of something I thought could help, a perspective of my own, but I had no clue how to use it or where to use it for that matter, leading to a banishment from my head to my visible irritation. One night this past November, I brought it to my father's attention, and we began to brainstorm ideas together. He suggested I write things down, but I wanted to go further than that. I wanted people to see my thoughts. I wanted them to relate to my thoughts. To help them out, I wanted them to give feedback. I wanted to help out people I did not know. As I was determined to impact as many people as I could, I'm still determined to do so at this very moment in time. Given I was on Facebook most of the time, I figured, why not start a Facebook page of my own, for these thoughts and things like that. I decided upon that and hastily started my page later that night. Then I experienced a very obvious roadblock. What shall I name the page? As I was pacing in front of my dad thinking, it came to me as spontaneously as all the other thoughts. Zaspie. A combination of my name and Aspie. It is spelled Z-A-S-P-I-E. Luckily, it's not a name really used around the web, so with that thought, Zaspie was born. As I began to get my friends involved with my writings on the page, my strength is more or less writing, because it just flows with me. I still have to work that over into physical speech. They gave me more feedback, and with my father's help, I got many other people that I didn't know to come see Zaspie as well, and I felt like I was actually doing something worthwhile for once in my life. The page has effectively helped me realize what I can do, and it allowed me to see one thing very clearly, that giving up was not an option. I was impacting others in a very positive way, and it all came back to me, creating win-win scenarios for all who benefited from my posts. I began to hear more from my friends and strangers alike about how much my writings have helped them, and I was able to work this newfound positivity into my everyday life and help others realize their own self-worth. Zaspie has affected me in so many ways, it still does, and I'd be happy to share more about it after the presentation, if any of you would like to hear more. This year at school, and in my life in general, I'm continuing the trend of being a positive role model, and I have actually been told this by some of my friends, helping others whenever they seek it, and learning how to better myself each and every day. This journey is still writing itself, and I will continue to follow it wherever it goes, pushing myself even further as the days go by. My challenges themselves are no more than labels used to describe certain aspects of the puzzle that pieces together to create the picture that is me, a perfect human being. Perfection can only be characterized by the imperfection that makes us human. Perfection is boring. What helps make things interesting for all of us in relationships and in life in general is the fact that we are flawed, we're humans, we're flawed. And we are unpredictable. The challenges that we as human beings all have to face, the rule that has driven us all to where we are in this room right now is that giving up is not an option and never will be. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity to share my story and allowing me to add another milestone to it as well. Keep on moving forward and shine on everybody.